Lesson 7, Influences on American Government. Part 1, Our European Heritage. Let's begin with the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta. For centuries, England was ruled by a monarch, which is a king or a queen. However, monarchs had very little power as part of the feudal system. The real power on the manor lay with the nobles. This is a system of decentralization of power. Power is decentralized, not centralized. This means that power and authority was at the local level, not at the central level. The monarch gave the powerful noble class land ownership. In exchange from the nobles, the monarch received loyalty, tax payments, and military support. King John, in 1199, treated his nobles harshly, and they rebelled. The nobles forced John to sign the Magna Carta in 1215. Remember, the nobles had the real power, not the king. Magna Carta is Latin for the Great Charter. What is the significance of the Magna Carta, and what did it do? 1. It protected noble privileges and upheld their authority. 2. It granted rights to all the landowners. 3. These rights included equal treatment under the law and trial by one's peers. These are significant protections for the noble class. It was a contract that limited the monarch's power by guaranteeing that no one, not even the king or the queen, is above the law. The Magna Carta helped establish the principle so dear to us in our system, the rule of law. As John Adams once said, we are a nation of laws, not men. The English Parliament. The word parliament actually is a French word. It comes from the French, meaning a talk or parler, a conference of any kind. The model parliament of Edward I in 1295. It was significant because it represented all classes of the English kingdom of Edward. Barons, higher clergy, knights, burgesses, or townspeople, and lower clergy as well. Initially, the Parliament was set up to advise the monarch. Today, or by the late 1300s, the Parliament had developed into a law-making body, writing laws, not just advising the monarch, but actually making laws by the late 1300s. Its role expanded from advisory to lawmaking. Parliament is a representative body that makes laws. Congress is the equivalent of the English Parliament. Our Congress in our country, the United States, is a representative lawmaking body too. The Glorious Revolution. When James II, a Stuart monarch, raised his son openly as a Catholic in violation of English law, James II was forced out in a relatively bloodless revolution. This was in 1688. Parliament then asked William and Mary from the Netherlands to come to England to rule jointly. However, there was a catch. William and Mary could not be absolute monarchs. They had to agree to the English Bill of Rights that Parliament had written. The English Bill of Rights put limits on the monarch's power and made Parliament the supreme governing body in England, not the monarch. And this was after centuries of conflict between English monarchs and the Parliament as to whom was the ultimate governing authority. This is kind of fast forwarding through some of English history to the Glorious Revolution. The English Bill of Rights that William and Mary signed stated that the monarch, number one, could not suspend Parliament, as previous monarchs had done throughout English history. Could not suspend Parliament. Charles I, for example, had suspended Parliament previously to the English Civil War. The English Bill of Rights stated that the monarch, too, could not create special courts. I believe it was Charles I who had the infamous Star Courts in English history. Could not create special courts. Could not impose taxes, number 3. Or raise an army, number 4, without Parliament's consent. The English Bill of Rights also declared that 5 members of Parliament would be freely elected and that members of Parliament 6 would be guaranteed free speech during meetings of Parliament. And the English Bill of Rights declared or guaranteed that every citizen would have the right to a fair trial by jury in court cases. Every citizen. Fair trial by jury. The English Bill of Rights also banned cruel and unusual punishments. The English Bill of Rights established a limited constitutional monarchy, what England has in place today. This was all in the late 1700s. 1688, the Glorious Revolution. 1689, the English Bill of Rights. The writing and signing of the English Bill of Rights is known as the Glorious Revolution, as mentioned, and also known as the Bloodless Revolution because it was a relatively bloodless limiting of the monarch's authority. Again, what this did was it made the Parliament, the supreme governing authority in England, not the monarch. Many of the English Bill of Rights have been written into our own United States Constitution. I want to clarify that the English has a parliamentary system today. We do not consider our system a parliamentary system. Ours is a presidential system. Well, what's the difference? In a parliamentary system, there is no separation of powers, meaning the executive, called the prime minister, is actually part of the legislative. He's a member of parliament, as is his cabinet. However, in a presidential system, the executive, called a president, is separate from the legislative. Our president is not a member of Congress. The president's cabinet is also separate from the legislative. There's a clear separation of powers in a presidential system, whereas in a parliamentary system, the executive is part of the legislative. English common law. Early on, England had no written laws except rules to live by established by tradition. As a system of courts arose, the court's decisions became the basis of a body of law. The court's decisions. When judges were asked to decide a case, they would look for a precedent. This is a ruling in an earlier case that was similar, the same circumstances of the case, a similar situation, a similar case. The ruling made by the judge in the case would establish a precedent. It sets a standard for a later court decision. And law based upon precedent is called common law. What does common law do? It makes the law predictable, not dependent on the judge you're having. The judge is bound by precedent. He has to rule according to precedent. So the law is predictable. It's consistent. And it's fair. The law is not arbitrary, nor is it arbitrarily applied. It's consistently applied. It's fairly applied according to precedent. Judges are bound by precedent under common law. Again, that is when the cases, the circumstances of the cases are similar. Similar situations. If the circumstances are different, the cases are different, then the judge can rule in a different fashion. So precedent only relates to similar cases, similar situations. If a judge does rule against a precedent that had been set previously, and the circumstances are similar, his decision would be overturned on appeal or review by a higher court, which we call an appellate court. More on our legal system, our court system, in later lessons. That concludes part 1 of our English heritage, lesson 7.